So today I'm going to review the House of the Dragon, the Game of Thrones spin-off and prequel. So when I first heard about this show, I didn't care about it, man. I just thought it was going to be trash, just like season 8, because they really went downhill with the writing in season 8. Even season 7, it was a bit off, but I mean, I don't hate that season, but it was a bit off, that's what I'm going to say. But it was kind of like a setup season for season 8, but they failed anyway, so it was kind of pointless that season if you think about it. Like, that's the season you don't even have to watch because you know how bad season 8's going to be. But yeah, so I didn't care about the show, I skipped it. Like, a few shows I've skipped this year, and I'm now finally watching them, and I'm just like, wow, they're actually pretty good. And it's mostly this show where I'm just like, wow, it's actually good. Beyond that too, like, because a lot of people are saying this is like House of the Dragon is basically prime Game of Thrones, because Game of Thrones hasn't been in its prime for a very long time, and I guess that kind of recaptures the prime. Not even just being good again, but actually the prime times of Game of Thrones. Yeah. I mean, not even The Walking Dead could do that, or, I mean, you got shows like Better Call Saul, like, that basically gets onto the level of prime Breaking Bad. But yeah, at least I'm just happy, like, this show actually found a way to get back on its feet after how bad the finale was in season 8 of Game of Thrones. Yeah, like, it's such a good show, has great characters, interesting politics stuff. Like, if you can make me interested in the political stuff that's happening in the show, like, you're definitely doing a good job. That's what I'm saying. Because that's something I wish we got to see in the final season in The Walking Dead with the Commonwealth, because that's how it kind of goes in the comics. It's not just, killing Commonwealth soldiers and defeating the main villain that's controlling them. It's more, political with how they do it. And it makes you think about which side is actually the right side and stuff, and what's actually the right thing to do. Where, there's a bad guy who's controlling a certain point of the Commonwealth, and we just have to kill them, and that's it. Like, that's all season 11 did. It was disappointing. When it comes to the Commonwealth storyline, anyway, it was a great finale, but could have been done better. But I'm just happy the show ended well. But yeah, this show, like, yeah, definitely, like, the things that I liked about Game of Thrones when I was watching it for the first time, because I'm one of those latecomers who kind of watched all of the show before the final season started. Yeah, season 8. So I was catching up like 7 seasons of the show. And man, I was loving it. Like, at first, it's a bit slow, but it's kind of building up the world. And when you get to those moments, I'm just like, damn. Even when there's no action and it's just people talking, like, it's just so interesting. Like, yeah. And that's what this show basically does. It kind of brings back those kind of things where you actually care about what characters are saying and who's on whose side and stuff, and just all the strategy is just yeah. It was cool to have that feeling back in Game of Thrones, because when you get to those last few seasons, that's kind of missing. It's all about the wow factor and stuff, instead of, like, actually making you think who is making the right decisions, who's on whose side. It's just, yeah, it's kind of fun when you kind of do it in that way. And I kind of wish that's how The Walking Dead did it in its final season, but no. They just wanted, there's a bad guy, take him out, the end. Yeah. Cut in the direction, yeah. And it sucked. But yeah. So I guess I could start with the main character, Rhaena. So basically she has, like, 2 actors throughout the show, because one's like the young Rhaena, and then there's the older Rhaena, because we kind of go for, like, different time skips as the show goes on. Yeah, every few episodes, like, there'll be a time skip. So basically we start with Rhaena kind of being like Arya Stark from Game of Thrones, like, the more adventurous and boyish. And they don't really want to get married or listen to what her the parents say. She just wants to do her own thing. Basically, she's Arya Stark at the beginning, but less interesting. I have to say, yeah, she's less interesting. She's okay, but just less interesting. And when it gets to a certain point where she starts being with her uncle, I mean, we already know that the Targaryens like to get together with family members, but flipping your little nephew, no. I skipped that scene when we got to that, but at least they're brave enough to show scenes like that, because in this generation, you'd get cancelled for that, but I guess for some people it's refreshing, but even though it's like, you know, but yeah, just some of the things that you see in the show, you wouldn't really normally see it in anything else in this generation. But you know, House of the Dragon is not scared to show those kind of things, and even when it comes to like childbirth and how horribly when it goes, and you just see all the blood, and oh my god, so painful. Like later on when she has like a child, well, she's trying to have a child, and it just goes so on. I mean, there's times where, you know, she does have a baby and it actually goes right, but then that moment when, you know, it kind of goes wrong and you just see all the blood and oh my god, it looks so painful, and you kind of respect her. Because, you know, her character starts off as someone who just wants to be carefree and do whatever she wants and doesn't want to be tied down by a man. But in that generation, you couldn't really do that. You had to, you know, give them offspring so they can be heirs to the throne. And she was kind of like the remaining child because something happens to the wife where she's trying to give birth, but it goes horribly wrong. And, you know, the king tries to make a decision, a hard decision to, you know, basically cut open his wife's womb to get out the baby. But even when he do that, it still dies anyway. And just like, damn, that sucks. But I think they was both going to die anyway, even if he didn't do that. So he didn't really have much of a choice. Yeah. Because back in those days, they didn't really have the stuff that we have now. So it was kind of limited. Even when you see the king deteriorating, like his body's just falling apart, there's not really much they can do to fully treat it. They just use maggots and stuff, and I'm just like, oh my god. Yeah. Which we'll talk about the king, but yeah. So when the character first starts off, I'm not really a big fan of her. Yeah. Maybe a little bit because I see a bit of Arya Stark in her and she's one of my favourite characters, but it gets to a point where she just starts to, I don't know, go a bit too much of what her father was saying, of having offspring, like just getting with random women. I mean getting with random men to the point where she gets with her uncle too, and I'm just like, what the hell? And then by the time there's the time skip, she has like multiple children, and some of them might be, you know, basically what they say, bastards, and if they're bastards, they can't really be heirs. Yeah. Because when it gets to like, I guess one of the people who are with the Targaryens, like they're like have like a partnership with them, an alliance, like the Valerians. Because basically, you know, Rhaena was supposed to marry like one of the sons, and we also find out that he's gay. So there's one who doesn't even want to be with a man, and then there's one who's gay. But then it gets to a point where they have to form an alliance, otherwise, in the future things might not work out. So with all the other alliances, like if they go to war and they're not really aligned, they're gonna be at a disadvantage. But the only way to create an alliance is by, you know, two of their family members coming together and, you know, getting married, even though they don't truly love each other. You know, she just thinks she does it for the best, basically, because there is someone who she liked, who she could have been with, but, you know, she wouldn't really be a princess at that point. She would have to run away and stuff. You know, getting with the knight, because the knight getting with the princess, like, man, especially at the age that she was probably like 15. Yeah, and he was like probably in his late 20s or something. Yeah, that probably wouldn't have gone well. He probably would have been executed. Yeah, so they probably would have had to run away, and let's just say the life wouldn't have been that great. So she decides to, you know, marry Valerian, who is, you know, gay and doesn't truly love her. So that's why he spends most of his time at war instead of with her. Yeah. And I think the person that he loved also gets killed too, so yeah. There was both in situations where they didn't really have a choice, so they just got married, and then we get to the time skip where we see the old actor. She has a bunch of kids. We see her give birth. Yeah, and she's just like bleeding through the hallway and stuff. Like, just seeing her go through all that, man. It shows how much tough she's become. And I kind of didn't really talk about Alicent, which I guess I'll talk about now, because that will also lead to her father. Then I'll just end things with Damien, and just what I thought of the whole show, basically, and how they end it. Yeah. So yeah. Alicent, her best friend. So basically it starts off with someone who is basically Rhaena's best friend, Alicent. You know, she's always there for her, but then she's also kind of really nice to her father. But then, because she's kind of like in a way, a kind of servant to the father, but she also comes from like royalty as well, like a big family. So when it gets to a point where the king has to marry because his wife passes away, because he just have to find a new wife to continue the Targaryens in power, because yes, they have all these dragons, which we do see a lot of dragons in this show, which is pretty cool. Not the best CGI like in Game of Thrones, but as long as the story's good, who really cares? Yeah. But yeah, basically she's kind of like a supporting character at first for Visery, however you say the king's name, and Rhaena. She's kind of there to support them. She's kind of there for them a lot. But then when it gets to a point where the king has to marry someone, and it's actually Alicent, let's just say the princess isn't really a big fan of that. Probably disgusted by it, even though she kind of does something way more disgusting in the future with her uncle, which we'll get to when I'm talking about fully his character. But yeah. So for 3 years, I guess their friendship is basically broken, and she doesn't really talk much to her father. But 3 years though, there is a bit of flaws sometimes in the story, near the end with one of the Valerians, the queen that never was the queen, whatever they call her. She does something where she could have ended a war, but just because of a certain thing, she didn't do it, and it just made no sense. But I'll get to that at the end, yeah. But you're not talking to someone for 3 years and they're living in the same place. It's just that kind of makes no sense. I feel like they would have eventually, come to terms with that situation, even though it was so awkward. Because just imagine your best friend ended up with one of your family members married as well. Oh my god, that must be so weird. And they're the same age as you as well. Oh my god. But just the way how things worked back then, you could be flipping 14, 15, and you could get married to someone who's in their flipping 40s, 50s. Oh my god. Ugh. Because then it gets to a point where the king's gonna marry a Valerian who's only she's 12 at the time, but she kind of speaks like she's an adult, and I'm just oh my god, this is weird, man. Oh my god. He wouldn't basically do anything with her. Oh my god, just even talking about it just sounds so wrong. But basically she would have to be a certain age before they make her offspring, and it's just weird, man, because that's how things actually worked back then. It's just to think about that, it's just so weird. Yeah. But instead he marries Alicent, and it just makes some conflict with the families, I guess. Because Rhaena doesn't really like that. But they eventually get to a point where they're kind of on speaking terms, even though for the longest time they're not, especially when you get to the time skip. And she's kind of looking after the king as he's getting sick, while basically Rhaena kind of ends up marrying Daemon after the Valerian's son basically dies. Well, they kind of fake his death. He actually just basically escapes on a boat. But then they kind of think the Valerians think they basically think Damien, who I'll get to, which I can't talk about his character because for most people he's the best character in the show. I'd say he carried the first few episodes, but then the king, some of his acting, and then I started to like Rhaena and stuff. Just yeah, I'll get to that, but yeah, because they basically suspect that Rhaena and Damien basically killed his son. Their son, both the wife and the husband. So that's kind of causing conflict as well, really. They don't really trust them, but then when things are starting to get really bad with the other alliances, they kind of have to try fix things by marrying their daughters to, I guess, the Targaryens, because they have kind of more kids afterwards who actually look like Targaryens, where I guess the bastard ones don't really look like them, and they just get casted out by a lot of people. Even one of the Valerians who gets his head chopped off because he literally says it in front of the king. And at this point, the king's just gone through so much, which yeah, I need to talk about his character. We should probably just talk about the king now. But yeah, basically Alicent's a supporting character at first and becomes really important by the end. With helping the king in his last days and making the tough decisions without the king, which we'll get to. Yeah. But I'd say her character's more interesting, but then she kind of tries to be... Let's just say she's not really making the best choices, just like the king. So it kind of leads to other characters having to make the harder decisions, basically, which, yeah, I'll get to. So the king, yeah, this is probably like, he probably has the best acting scene in the whole show, near the end, yeah, in his final episode, because we basically see his character go through so much, like, from the very beginning, we see him lose his wife and son, yeah, from a failed childbirth, yeah, and then he decides to make his daughter the heir, which you couldn't really do that back then because it'd make a lot of conflict and they wouldn't really take women as like being a queen of a whole, realm back then, yeah. So, he just didn't really make the best choices that would actually protect the kingdom, because it gets to a point where, throughout the years, he's just seen him fall apart. And when he gets to Alicent, she's looking after him, yeah. And then when he gets to the final moments when he kind of has to sort out things with all the family beef and stuff, you just see him walking slowly with like half of his face just messed up, but he has like a mask to cover it. Even when he's in so much pain, he just comes out to settle things with the families, and it's just like such an amazing scene, man. Yeah, such great acting in that scene. Probably the best acting in which I'm probably gonna cover it anyway on my main channel, but yeah, such a great scene, man. Great acting. But yeah, just at the beginning, I couldn't really respect his choices, but I could tell he was a good man, just not a good king. Like, he made terrible decisions, but he tried his best to get the family together. Maybe to some degree he succeeded, but he definitely failed with certain people who had beef with each other, because there was a time where some of the family members were fighting, like the kids. The kids were basically killing each other, and one basically loses an eye, and that makes some beef that, continues up until they're a lot older, probably like 16, 17. And it gets to a point by the end, like, one of them basically kills the other without meaning to. I think he just wanted to get revenge on what happened to his eye, but, it's Alicent's son, basically, but yeah. He just wanted to get revenge on what happened to him. He ends up accidentally killing, one of Rhaenyra's kids, basically, yeah. One of the bastard sons. I hate to call them that, but yeah, I just can't remember the names. It sounds a bit wrong, but that's what the people call them, because they don't really view them as, actually Targaryens, because they might come from someone else, like maybe the knight who she was once with, and he just falls apart, like, later on. Oh my god. Like, he even gets kicked out too, yeah. And then his father decides to leave, even though he's been so loyal to the king, and the king doesn't want him to leave, but he just feels like it's for the best for his family, yeah. Because he wants to protect his son and stuff. Whatever the full story is there, I just wasn't fully paying attention to his story, because there was just so many other stories going on that was so great, so yeah. Yeah. Just... And then the final decision that he makes at the end on his deathbed, before, I guess after the dinner scene, which, in that scene he's just trying his best to get the family together and united and apologise to each other. And it seems like things are actually working. You actually see in his last moments that he's actually happy, because he's seeing everyone getting along. And then in that moment, like, he just, he's starting to fall apart, and, he has to go to his deathbed. And he makes one last wish to, Alicent, of who should be the heir. And I think it was Aegon. But that's from, like, Rhaenyra's family, though. Because, they still kind of have beef. So when Alicent heard that, she wasn't really happy to hear that. But that's not from Alicent's family. That's not from Rhaenyra's family. That's from Alicent's. But I think she didn't really have much faith in Aegon. Like, that's the son that she didn't like the most. But I guess he viewed him as the one who could protect the realm somehow, even though Aegon, like, he didn't even want to be king, and he didn't feel like anyone truly cared about him, like, especially the king. And then in his final moments, he decides to make him the king of the entire realm, because even when he finds out, it's just like, this is a joke. But then when he sees that important knife, he's just like, wait, is this real? And he just believes it straight away. Like, this has to be a bit of flaws near the end, especially when it gets to the point where he's crowned king, and then one of the Valerians come to kill the king, because she basically gets imprisoned, like the queen. But from that, like she just knows like something bad's gonna happen if he becomes king. So she tries to basically kill the king with her dragon, but she decides to spare him, which makes no sense. Like there's some kind of dumb writing there, but since most of the show was good, I kind of forgave it, even though it made no sense. Like you could have just cut that scene out without her coming in, and the scene would still work. Yeah, because if you're not actually gonna kill him, then what was the point of that entire scene? Like it made no sense. Yeah. And then that's when you just see her with Raina. So they basically still have an alliance together. So that means Alicent and Raina are gonna have beef, especially when one of the sons basically kill her son when she finds out. Because also in this moment, she's dealing with the loss of her father, and when she's trying to have like such a painful birth by herself because she doesn't want help from anyone, and you just see so much blood. Oh my god, yeah, it's a hard scene to watch, man. Oh my god, and you just respect her so much. Yeah, even though the spins I can never respect about her, like with being with Damien, which I guess is gonna be the final character I talk about before end my review. You just gotta respect her for the things she goes through, and when it gets to the point where the son basically dies, yeah, trying to give birth to it, and then when she finds out about her son, one of her bastard sons that ends up getting killed by Alicent's sons because he wanted revenge, but it kind of gets out of hand because he basically has like a dragon from the Valerians. Yeah, he basically stole it and decided to keep it, even though it was supposed to go to one of the daughters. Yeah, when there was kids, I guess he was able to tame it, but then he doesn't seem like he has full control of it because it accidentally kills one of Raina's kids, and you actually see that he didn't mean to do that. Like he's just like shocked of what he's done, and he knows there's gonna be consequences where they could have easily just made him like, "Muhahaha, killed him," and it's just like so cliche, like a smile on his face. But he actually is actually shocked what he's done. Like he didn't mean to kill him. Yeah, sorry for the muhaha, that was a bit extra, but yeah, you know what I mean. Having like an evil smile, like yes, I win, I killed him, but he knows what's gonna happen from what he's done. So yeah. And then when you see flipping Raina's reaction to what's just happened, like, because she's dealing with like the loss of her father when she finds out, basically losing her son that she failed to give birth to, and now one of her other sons just died. I mean, if she became a Mad Queen, I'd probably be down with it because she was trying to be peaceful, trying to not have a war where Damien, he just wants to the point where he's even strangling Raina because he's not listening. Well, she's not listening to Damien with what he wants to do. Because, yeah, I'm going to talk about Damien now anyway, but yeah. Like, if she became a Mad Queen, basically, I would have been fine with it. Compared to what I did with Daenerys. Like, it made no sense, but yeah. Let's talk about Damien, the final character for the review. So yeah, Damien, the one who carried most of the show until like some of the other characters kind of got more fleshed out and more entertaining. Because Damien, by the end, they didn't do much with him compared to the beginning where he was the most entertaining character. He had the best scenes. Yeah, he seemed like someone who could have been the heir to the throne. Like he could have been the king, but he kind of threw it on away. He kind of threw it all away with the things that he did to the point where he kind of gets kicked out. So he ends up, marrying someone to get some power. He ends up marrying a lot of people to get power because back in the day, to get alliances, that's what you had to do. Just marry people, I guess. And when he gets to the point when he gets to, Raina, that gives him a lot of power, I guess. Yeah. But at first, he ends up getting, like, respect when he kind of takes on this, just this little basic villain group, like these crab people who end up like torturing and oh my god, the things they do basically. And the Valerians, they basically decide to go to battle with the crab people with Damien because in this moment he doesn't really have a lot of alliances, but when he actually defeats the crab people, he kind of gains their respect. And could you say without Damien, the Valerians would even care to be an alliance with the Targaryens? Yeah, because they was kind of having like a falling out because he didn't want any of his kids to marry his daughter, like the king. Yeah. So when Damien was seeming like he was gonna betray the king and try to go to war with him, like the Valerians are on his side, but when things start to work out, they all kind of basically end up back together. But yeah, and just the way how they introduce his character when they're doing that thing with the horse and, you know, with the spear and stuff, and he actually ends up losing, but he actually takes it like a champ, I think. Anyway, I can't fully remember how that full scene goes, but man, I'm just surprised he lost anyway. Yeah, he's a really entertaining character. He's someone who is a bit he is definitely a smart character here. Like, he has a lot of strategies to basically survive the whole ordeal of stuff with all the things that happen. Yeah, to the point where he's taken on like a whole army. I mean, it does get help, but you know, just being able to outsmart his enemies, it makes him a very, you know, intriguing character through most of the show until he becomes a background character. I mean, not a full background character, but not as much scenes and dialogue as he once did. But yeah, he's definitely an interesting character. And without him at the beginning, I'd probably be a bit bored. I mean, because I'd say the show starts off a bit average, but he was the one who was making me still watch it, because if it didn't have him, yeah. But by the time you get to like a certain episode, like things just get really entertained anyway with what's going on. So yeah, this guy at first is the one who will keep you watching the show, and then when it gets good, you don't even need him anymore. Like, you can just focus on all these other characters and stuff, and just have great storytelling. Yeah. But yeah, I guess I could end it here. If there's anything I missed, we can talk about it in the comments. Well, I mean, I guess I could say the stuff with, I guess, the kin and Damien. Like when the kin's in his last moments, like, Damien is just so, you know, caring towards him, because they have been through a lot with each other. They've had some bad times and good times, but even in his final moments, he was kind of there for him, even when he's like struggling to get to like the, you know, the Game of Thrones chair. He's kind of there to help him, even though the kid doesn't fully need his help. But you know, when you see him like put the crown on his head and stuff, like just some of those moments, because you kind of see him arguing at first in the early days, and in his last moments, he's just like so respectful to him. Yeah, some good scenes, man, in the show. But yeah, I'm just gonna end it here. A great show. If you haven't watched it yet, you need to watch it. I mean, if you're watching this review, then you've probably watched it, but yeah. Guess I'll end it here. Appreciate it if you can leave a like. I'll see you in the next one. Peace, guys.